The Richard Roeper Show is brought to you by AmericanEagle.com Studios. The digital landscape is changing rapidly, and to compete in today's online business environment, you need an experienced partner. Since 1995, AmericanEagle.com has partnered with companies of all sizes, offering web design, web development, e-commerce, mobile apps, and digital marketing. All of that will help drive your overall business's success because they believe that today's online world is your online opportunity. Visit AmericanEagle.com to get started today. AmericanEagle.com, AmericanEagle.com. Okay, let's get right to it, as they used to say. I often like to share entertainment-related stories from Entertainment Weekly or Los Angeles Times or whatever the case may be. We're going to start off with a story about me. And this is the Hollywood Reporter. The lead is longtime film critic Richard Roeper is leaving the Chicago Sun-Times after a 37-year career. The influential reviewer, it's their words, not mine. The influential reviewer is taking a buyout from Sun-Times, for whom he has written as a contributor since 1987. Roeper, a Chicago native, is among 30 people or so who are taking a buyout from the iconic newspaper this week, including reporters and editors, as the Sun-Times, along with the NPR radio station WBEZ, now operate with a nonprofit media model. Roeper co-hosted the television series At the Movies, which became Ebert and Roeper, with, of course, Roger Ebert. And he announced his final day with the Sun-Times will be March 21st, but he won't be putting his pen down anytime soon. All of that very accurate. In fact, this podcast is dropping, as they say, on March 21st, Friday, which will be my last day at the Sun-Times. Everything in the story, and you can find more comprehensive news type and business type reporting on just by Googling or however you search for things these days, your imaginary friend, your robotic friend, your AI friend. So the Sun-Times and WBEZ, we're in this thing called the Chicago Public Media, and they got it. It's a nonprofit, but you can't just bleed money, and you got to figure out a way to break even or make some money and all that kind of stuff. So for budgetary reasons, we were told that if a number of reporters, editors, other employees, by the way, of Chicago Public Media, of a number of people didn't apply for a buyout, or you'd get a package, a compensation package, that layoffs are going to be necessary. So along with a lot of other factors that I don't really want to go into in detail, other than to say, for me, it felt like, okay, I think this is the time to take buyout. Hopefully that will help. In fact, what we're being told is there won't be layoffs because a number of us took buyouts. If you're in Chicago, you'll know a lot of the names, but even nationally, for example, Rick Tellender, the legendary sports writer for the Sun-Times, who was at Sports Illustrated for years and then came to the Sun-Times because he didn't want to travel as much because he's from this area and he has kids at the time they were younger. And if you don't know Rick's work, he's written some amazing books and great articles. He wrote, one of his great books was Heaven is a Playground, where he spent the summer chronicling the playground, the great hoops scene in New York City. And D.B. Sweeney played Rick in the movie Heaven is a Playground. And Rick is taking the buyout. I'm sure he's going to continue to write as well. So for me, obviously, I'm talking to you guys. I think I'll probably in the near future go to maybe do 2 podcasts a week instead of 1, because I will have more flexibility. I will still be on the ABC affiliate in Chicago doing Windy City Weekend, and you can follow them anywhere because we got the Facebook and the website and everything. And then I'm figuring out what to do about written reviews. I certainly hope to continue with them. So I want to make it very clear, I'm not retiring at all. You guys know how much I like to yammer on. I ain't going anywhere. Right here in Chicago. So I want to make that clear, but I will not be writing for the Sun-Times after this week. So I was thinking I could tell you guys a million stories, but all I'll say is that I started at the Sun-Times in the 80s when they still had a smoking room. Smoking lounge in the newsroom. We were at 401 North Wabash Avenue. If you see old-timey movies or TV depictions, you sometimes can see the squat barge-like building with the Sun-Times in yellow across the side. That's where the newsroom was. It's now the site of Trump Tower, and they built it differently. They didn't just move into the barge. But it was a really cool time because I was just a few years out of school and learning the ropes. And I went through, editorial assistant and general assignment reporter and news columnist, pop culture columnist, eventually becoming a full-time critic. But some of the reporters there in the 80s had been around, if they'd been around for 20 years, that means they were around for some going back to like the Kennedy Nixon debates and the election of John F. Kennedy. And then, of course, all the civil rights movements and the Vietnam War. But then locally, they had covered the Chicago, the Democratic convention of 68, the infamous convention, and all kinds of, incredible news stories and the two mayor dailies and Harold Washington. And there were a lot of reporters. Listen, when you come into a newsroom, it ain't all, hugs and roses and seashells and balloons from the older guard. I think that's almost at any job. But a lot of veteran reporters I got to know really well pretty fast. One of the tricks I was told early on was to go to the Billy Goat every Friday night. The Billy Goat, it's on Lower Michigan, basically between where the Sun-Times and the Tribune were located. You go down the steps. It's not the original Billy Goat, but that one's been around for a long time. Of course, the Billy Goat immortalized in Saturday Night Live and the cheeseburger sketch. But I was told to go down there because that's where and by the way, that place you could almost not see through all the cloud of smoke when you descended the stairs. But the Sun-Times, the Tribune, City News Bureau, sometimes TV and radio reporters, the place would be jam-packed on a Friday evening. And that's how I got to know people like Tim Weigel, for example, who was a great sportscaster, unfortunately died way too young. But Tim, before becoming a television personality, was a writer, a sports writer, and a lot of other broadcast people have started in print. So, and there were literally ink-stained wretches because if you ever heard that term, those ink-stained wretches. The Sun-Times printing press was in the basement of the actual Sun-Times building. So they could actually stop the presses. They could say, stop the presses. But when the presses rolled, the whole building would shake. And the crafty, wily, old and not so old press operators, all the guys who worked down there, all the people that worked down there, they would wear, they'd fashion hats out of paper, the big rolls of paper, and they'd wear a little hat, and they'd be down there drinking. So I got to know a lot of people and forged lifelong friendships at the Sun-Times. And as I mentioned, started off, really just answering the phone and sorting mail, and when they had phones and mail, and getting the occasional freelance assignment. The idea then was, let's get your foot in the door, kid, and you can be in the newsroom and learn from everybody, and then we'll groom you and you can do other things. So, then I was a general assignment news reporter, which was a invaluable experience, even though that was not my career goal. I always wanted to be, on the columnist side of things or the entertainment side of things. But for 3 years, I was a GA, which means you'd come in or sometimes they'd call you at home, and you'd be assigned to something. Sometimes it would be an ongoing thing, like you're covering a trial. But a lot of times it was breaking news. Hey, there's a fire in Pilsen, or, sometimes it's fun. Hey, this hostage has been returned to America and they're coming home through O'Hare Airport, or hey, it's Taste of Chicago or Lollapalooza or White Sox opening day. So, you got to cover everything. And unfortunately, a lot of times too, it would be crime. And then eventually I became a columnist. And for many, many years, I just wrote about general interest topics. It was the greatest job in the world because 5 days a week, I could decide pretty much what I was going to write about. And a lot of it was local, but it was a time too in the 80s and 90s where a lot of times the Sun-Times would say, like, let's send you out to California for a week to get some local flavor or, on the scene reporting from the O.J. Simpson case. Or let's send you, I think, what was the Bill Clinton impeachment hearing? I want to say it's 1998. I literally had a seat for a couple of days in Washington. I went to New York City in the immediate aftermath of 9/11. I was on the first commercial flight when we were allowed to fly again on American Airlines. I'll never forget that, to write about the aftermath of 9/11. And I think there were about 10 or 12 people on the plane. So the flight attendants were sitting with us half the time. And it was just, and coming into Manhattan and seeing you can still see the smoldering ashes, and the towers had not been, completely, they were, you've seen the famous photos of like the kind of twisted metal frame and foundation. So I spent a week there interviewing rescue workers and citizens and people. And then, of course, I got to do a lot of interviews, and this was all for the Chicago Sun-Times. So I probably went to LA probably 100 times, to Hollywood, if you will, for junket and press interviews. Starting off, like when I first started doing it, I was talking to Jack Lemmon. I met Paul Newman. I met Paul Newman actually in Kansas City, where he was filming a wife. He was filming a movie with his wife, the legendary Joanne Woodward. It was their last movie together. They had done so many. So I went there, and I'll never forget Paul Newman walking in the room saying, I'm Paul. Did I mention Sean Connery and Walter Matthau and, the old guard of Hollywood who were still working when I was starting. And then I remember I interviewed like a 22-year-old or a 21-year-old Julia Roberts. And I remember her telling me about her niece, Emma Roberts. I went to New York and spent 2 days with Phil Collins and got to see him play the old Nassau Coliseum. And he had just had a daughter named Lily Collins. So I got to do all these interesting things for the Sun-Times that eventually segued into the entertainment side of things and pop culture columnist. And of course, the Sun-Times newsroom, that's where I met Roger Ebert, who liked my columns and, actually saw that I was a huge movie fan. And occasionally, even when I was still doing news type stuff, there was a horror film or something that not that he didn't love horror, but if it was, sort of what we used to call the drive-in or B movies, he'd say, let Richard write the reviews. So my first reviews for the Sun-Times date all the way back to the 80s. I have, I looked through the database, 16,000 bylines in the Sun-Times over the years. That's everything from if I was writing an obit or a quick feature or a review or a column. And then, because of Roger, of course, he became a friend, a colleague, a mentor. And then we became television partners for the better part of a decade. So when I think of that, and then there's so many other friends and relationships that I'm still friends with so many people that have long since retired from the Sun-Times and gotten to know some of the young guard. So the Sun-Times is not going away. They're going to be a different version of the Sun-Times after these buyouts. But I have nothing but great memories of working there. It was time to go. Time for me to maybe kind of get out of my comfort zone and try writing and I've written for a bunch of different places over the years. I've been very lucky to do that, written for magazines and written 9 books, but it's been a long time since I've written a book. So maybe it's time, we'll see. But I wish everybody there the best. There are a lot of really good friends of mine who are still there. So don't be mad at the Sun-Times. This is just, this is life and this is journalism in 2025. And I can tell you this, that's what year it is, right? From the moment I started at the Sun-Times, from the late 80s, all the way through the night, every 5 years or so, we would be hearing the stories that we were probably going to go out of business. Most cities that are 2 newspaper towns are now only have 1, and some that had, like New York City. I don't know how many I think they might have had 12 at some point, but a lot of great cities don't have 2 newspapers, and the Sun-Times and the Tribune. There, I remember when I was growing up, we had the Sun-Times, the Tribune. There was the Chicago Daily News, which is a great newspaper. There was a paper called the Chicago American. For a while, we had the Chicago Today. There'd be 3 or 4 newspapers on the stands. So the fact that we still have the 2 is pretty awesome. And there's still to this day a good old-fashioned respectful rivalry between the 2 papers. A lot of people have gone back and forth from the Trib to the Sun-Times and back again. But there are a lot of really, really good journalists who are still going to be at the Sun-Times, turning out important work, telling the stories of Chicago, which is actually my kind of town. Okay. We got into a little bit of a rant there. I had some other stuff I want to talk about. I told you guys last time we were going to talk about repeatability in rewatching TV shows, but this happened, so I figured we should talk about it. What we can do here is take a break and talk about Portillo's, and then I'm going to tell you guys about some new releases. All right, it's time to tell you about Portillo's, the greatest single fast casual cuisine experience you're ever in your life. Let's talk about the hot dogs and all the famous Chicago ingredients. They'll do it for you, so you don't have to worry about getting it wrong. That includes the poppy seed bun. Then we can talk about the Italian beef, the sausage, and the fries, the salad, the chicken, you name it, all topped up, of course, with the legendary Portillo's chocolate cake. It's fast casual. That means it's better than fast food. You can sit down if you go to one of the restaurants, but it's still super casual. And you can order anywhere in the country via Portillos.com. That's Portillos.com. Once again, Portillos.com. Ask your friends from Chicago about it. Portillos.com.
Where do I start? You're going down a very dangerous road. And we ain't been down dangerous roads before. But that's the risk you take. Me, I take that.
But you're not where I am. I give to charities, I pay my taxes.
Let's remember something. I put you where you are today. It's because of me. Mr. Good Citizen, you want to be like them? Come on, you ain't like them. They own this country. They're bigger gangsters than we ever could be. All of a sudden, you want to be half in, half out, half a racketeer? You can't have it both ways. You're either in or you're out.
Okay, that's a little sound from the Alto Nights, a new feature film arriving. You know, you think about this. Robert De Niro, we just had him make his first major. He's done made-for-TV movie type things, but this is his first limited series where he did 0 Day on Netflix, right? The conspiracy political thing where he played the former president of the United States. Now in the Alto Nights, Robert De Niro has a dual role. And, you know, the cool thing is in both the series and in this movie, De Niro, who's like, what, 81 now, I want to say, these are not, and he's done, unfortunately, listen, you do what you do to keep working. And I think he's got a young child, doesn't he? So, you know, and Bobby D's doing just fine, I'm sure. But anyway, what I love about both the series and the movie is that he's playing real roles. They're not cutesy grandpa cameos. They're not embarrassments. There's not, oh, let's make fun of what he's done. And you know, they're serious films. And the Alto Nights, it's interesting because it's a gangster film, and De Niro has done a lot of gangster films, crime films, Mean Streets, of course, Once Upon a Time in America. The two of the best in the genre of all time, with Goodfellas and Casino, and then even relatively recently, The Irishman. And this is from the director of the Alto Nights is Barry Levinson, who did Rain Man, and he did Bugsy and Wag the Dog, and Nicholas Pileggi is the co-writer. I'm not sure if it's Nicholas Pileggi or Pileggi. I'm sorry, Nicholas Pileggi, who co-wrote Goodfellas and Casino with Scorsese. So you've got this incredible resume, right? It's not a great film, but it's a good film. It's a solid film, and it's based on a true story, and it's very accurate to the events that took place. It's about the rivalry between two crime bosses in New York, mostly in the 1950s, but they had been friends since childhood. And Robert De Niro plays both of them. He plays Frank Costello, who is the kind of the boss of bosses in the 50s, but also becomes this well-known figure in New York society. He hosts these big charitable endeavors, and he's always with his wife, Bobby, who's played by Deborah Messing, who's wonderful in this. And then De Niro also plays, so Frank Costello, make no mistake about it, the guy was a hardcore gangster who committed or ordered tons of crimes, but he had this sort of avuncular other side to him, and he wanted to keep the peace among the many families in New York City. He was always like, "Why we shouldn't go to war? There's plenty of ill-gotten gains for all of us." Then you have De Niro also playing Vito Genovese. Now, Vito Genovese had gone away to prison. He had at one point was in exile in Italy, and he was a lot more hot-tempered. He wanted to get into the drug trade. And when he came back to New York City, he thought he'd be in charge. But by that point, his friend Frank Costello was clearly in charge. So now you've got this feud between the two of them. And this all happened in real life. This is a fictional story. But then Genovese ordered a hit on Costello by Vincent the Chin Gigante. Remember Vincent the Chin? He was the guy that walked around in New York for years, like in his bathrobe, mumbling so he wouldn't get arrested, or to prove that he didn't know what he was doing. So anyway, the hit gets botched, and then it becomes this whole movie is about the rivalry between these two. So of course you're going to get scenes where De Niro and De Niro are in the picture together, different makeup, different prosthetics, if you will, in hair. I don't think there's a ton of digital de-aging, but I think there's probably some, because they look more like guys in their 50s than an 81-year-old guy. And it's fascinating, because what I love about it is that De Niro creates these two distinctly different characters. And again, you see Frank Costello with his wife, and they got this beautiful penthouse apartment, and they keep talking about getting out of the life, once everything gets straightened out. And then you got De Niro as Vito Genovese, and he plays him a lot like a mob version of Jake LaMotta in Raging Bull, almost the same sort of tricks of dialogue and cadences, and also the same paranoia and jealousy and rage. So there are scenes where Vito will see like his wife getting a hug from an underling who's just trying to calm her down, and he's like, "What's he touching her like that for?" That guy's probably not long for this world. Who knows? We'll see. And he starts wondering if like his most loyal lieutenants are talking about him behind his back. So you're watching this guy sort of fall apart, and eventually there's this, and again, this is a real life thing that happened where this was the first time that the feds and the local police could really prove that the mafia, whatever you want to call it, this thing of ours was not just a local thing, that they were all in touch with each other. The mob leaders in Detroit and Texas and New York, because they all gathered at an upstate New York farm for this big meeting about who's going to be in charge. And they all drove there, with their henchmen or their bodyguards or whatever. So you get this scene on this farm that really happened in real life, and the New York State Police got wind of it, and then they busted the place because now they had the license plates and information for a lot of these mob figures, some of them who might have been wanted, but it proved that they all knew each other. It was evidence that they all knew each other, that they weren't just independent local businessmen who also were criminals, that it was this wide-ranging organization. And the scene that they have in Alto Nights, in the Alto Nights, is near the end of the film. But if you remember the film, analyze this, the opening sequence, the mobster played by Robert De Niro, of course, is telling us in a flashback sequence, I think it's about his dad and his uncle, definitely about his dad, and it's about them getting busted at that same upstate farm. So it's sort of like we're sort of coming full circle there. Really well done. The period piece photography is fantastic. Barry Levinson, he's a very accomplished director. It's a little bit muted at times, like kind of moves along at its own pace. But the pure joy in the Alto Nights is watching Robert De Niro play two roles, and he's great in both of them. Also want to mention a film. This came out, I think last week, but we were talking about sports mostly last week. But it's called Black Bag.
Where are you off to?
Black Bag.
To be with someone in this business. You each know what you know, and you never discuss certain things. I would do anything for you.
Would you?
Yes.
You got a breach.
One of our people stole something.
You cannot imagine the damage. Find the leak.
Give me 2 weeks.
Thousands of innocent people will die.
Okay? 1 week. Who's the suspect?
Your wife.
When you can lie about everything, how do you tell the truth about anything?
Do you think this isn't normal, the way you're doing this?
Maybe this is all your greatest game, George.
It's a very dangerous line of work.
I'll say.
Would you kill for me, George?
In Black Bag, first of all, Michael Fassbender and Cate Blanchett, come on, as married spies. I mean, how great is that? And, we've seen in the movie and TV versions of, what was it, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and even in the Netflix action comedy Back in Action, that spies seem to have a tendency to couple up. And they kind of have fun with this. Steven Soderbergh, by the way, is the director of Black Bag, who's, Steven Soderbergh in the Ocean's movies and every other, he's done an amazing career. And this is just a film where you can tell everybody's just having a great time. It's not light because there's some heavy stuff, but it does have kind of a breezy feel, being that it's a movie about undercover agents who all work for the National Cybersecurity Center in Britain, which is a real thing. But so they're all into cybersecurity and crossing and double crossing. And as one of there's a great dinner party because they're all couples who work for the spy agency. And as one of them says, well, who else are we going to date? Because if you lie for a living, you can't really date somebody outside the business. They'll never know what you're actually up to when you say you're going out for, a trip as an insurance agent. But if you date somebody within the industry, that they're professional liars too. So it plays off a lot about that because Fassbender's character of George Woodhouse gets wind that there's a traitor in the ranks, and Cate Blanchett's Catherine is one of the 5 names on the list. So now we got to figure out. Now, George doesn't believe that Catherine's a spy, but he still finds out that she's kind of doing some stuff that doesn't quite add up. So it's all about them figuring out what the other one's up to. And then we get a lot of other relationships in there. And on top of all, there's a terrific ensemble cast. On top of all that, the head of the agency is played by Pierce Brosnan. And if not, no, this isn't MI6, but it's just great to see James Bond. And there is for sure a James Bond kind of Easter egg winking nod in here. So it's just like the script is really good. The script is written by the same David Koepp who gave us Jurassic Park and I think Mission Impossible. Yeah, Panic Room. I mean, so you got this great screenwriter. Oh, he recently collaborated with Soderbergh on Kimmy and Presence. Presence was just not too long ago. That was the one about the ghost story told from the point of view of the ghost. Because Steven Soderbergh's always trying something different. I think he was one of the first major directors to say, I'm going to make something just with my iPhone. And so you've got this incredibly smart, sly, darkly funny script. You got Soderbergh lighting the film almost like it's a rom-com, but then you have these actors who are playing deadly operatives, and everybody's just on their A game. So if you get a chance to check out Black Bag, go for it. Okay, that's going to do it. We're going to call it an evening. Thanks to everybody for listening, and I'm glad you guys are going to stick with me, hopefully for the next many, many years. And for those of you who have read me either with the physical Sun Times or digital ways, online, whatever the case may be, I truly and sincerely appreciate it, because the reason I was able to stay there so long and do what I want to do is because you guys read me, and I will forever be grateful for that. Okay, we will talk soon.